Welcome to the deep dive. You know that word selfishness? It often gets such a bad rap, doesn't it?
It really
It's
does.
almost like a dirty word in our society. But what if we told you that maybe embracing a certain kind of selfishness is actually the key to healthier relationships
Yeah.
and a more authentic life?
It's a really provocative idea, yeah. And our deep dive today is all about challenging that sort of ingrained notion. We're going to unpack the concept of boundaries, and we're drawing deep insights from Michelle Elman's book, The Joy of Being Selfish, why you need boundaries and how to set them. It's quite transformative.
That's right. So our mission here is to really cut through all that societal noise, figure out what boundaries actually are, how they empower you in ways you might not even expect, and give you practical, actionable ways to integrate them into your daily life.
Right. It's about really changing how you navigate, well, all your relationships and ultimately your relationship with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Okay, so to kick us off,
Mhm.
the book offers this definition of selfish that honestly, most of us would probably recoil from immediately.
Oh, yeah.
It defines it as seeking or concentrating on one's own advantage, pleasure, or well-being without regard for others. And the author, she really leans into it, saying this kind of selfishness is absolutely necessary for self-love. What's the biggest internal shift someone needs to make to really embrace that idea?
Hmm.
Selfishness as self-love.
That really is the crux of it, isn't it? We're sort of taught that self-love is fine, as long as you've already taken care of everyone else first.
Right, the leftovers model.
Exactly. But Elman argues, well, once you've done that, there's usually no time or energy left for you.
Hmm.
So the radical insight here is that boundaries become the practical, actionable side of self-love.
Right.
It's about proactively saying, look, I'm going to get my needs met, and I'm not going to just sit around expecting others to figure it out and do it for me.
Yeah.
And if that's what selfish means, then yeah, she embraces it.
And it really pushes back against that pervasive idea that, good people have to put others' needs first, always.
Totally.
The book points out this unintended consequence. If you're constantly putting others first, you end up completely forgotten.
Yeah.
And what's often missed is that taking care of yourself, it's actually one of the most loving things you can do for the people around you.
Exactly. Because otherwise they often feel this unspoken pressure, this responsibility to do that duty for you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And conversely, while selfless people often get all the praise, the book offers this really powerful critique of that behavior. It suggests that selflessness isn't always about genuine altruism. Often it's driven more by a fear of asking for what you want or just this overriding desire to be liked.
Oh, I think we could all relate to that a little bit. The book mentions the person who can't choose where to eat, right?
Yeah.
Seems kind, but...
It's exhausting for everyone else
Yeah.
because you're constantly trying to read their mind, figure out what they really want, and eventually, resentment just builds up.
Definitely been there. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The book points out this ironic twist.
Yeah.
Often, those quote-unquote selfless acts are actually for the individual themselves. They're trying to fill some kind of void they aren't confronting, so they make sacrifices nobody asked for.
And then they get resentful about it.
Exactly. And there's this sort of implicit, maybe subconscious assumption that the other person just isn't capable without their help.
And that's a huge problem, right? Because that selfless person who's so deeply involved in your life often struggles to, boundary their opinions. They feel entitled to weigh in on everything.
Oh, yeah.
The book suggests, look, if we were all a bit more selfish in this redefined way, basically, minding our own business more, there'd probably be fewer judgments, fewer unsolicited opinions flying around.
Right. You'd be focused on your own stuff.
Exactly. You'd spend your energy resolving your own problems instead of projecting them onto others, like road rage or taking your bad day out on a waiter. That's often misplaced energy.
Okay, so this is a total paradigm shift. How does Elman's definition of boundaries then maybe differ from what people typically think? And why, even though the benefits seem obvious, are they just so incredibly hard to actually set?
Well, at their core, boundaries are really simple. They're just how we teach other people how to treat us.
Okay.
They define where you end and another person begins. And they're essential because, they protect us from manipulation, from gaslighting, disrespect, even abuse. They're basically the rules of engagement for healthy relationships.
I really love the house analogy she uses. It's so clear.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah. Your life is like a house, 4 walls for protection. You choose who comes in the door. A violation isn't just someone walking in uninvited. It's like someone kicking down the door or climbing through a window.
Right. You wouldn't just invite them in to make themselves at home then, would you?
No way.
Yeah.
And constantly giving in to someone knocking just to make the annoying noise stop. That's like letting someone in just because they're pestering you.
Yeah.
It really shows, I think, that boundaries aren't just rules. They're about recognizing you're the architect and the security guard for your own well-being.
It absolutely shifts the perspective. And the reason we struggle so much often goes right back to childhood.
Doesn't it always?
Pretty much. The author shares this memory, being about 10, told to just have a bite of a berry tart she hated. Why? Because it's rude if you don't eat it.
Ugh.
Right. So that teaches you, okay, my discomfort doesn't matter. Upsetting someone else is worse than my own feelings. Or being told, stop crying, it's impolite or makes others uncomfortable. These little moments, they deeply ingrain this idea that our feelings just don't rank as high as other people's perceptions.
Right. And then as we get older, our theory of mind develops.
Mm-hmm.
We become aware that other people have thoughts and feelings too.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes prioritizing ourselves even harder because we have this innate human need to be liked, to fit in. But this sort of unexpected result of constantly lowering your boundaries just to get approval, it isn't just that others don't respect you, it's that you end up filled with negative emotions like anger and resentment. It's a totally self-defeating cycle.
Absolutely. So how do you know if you, listening right now, specifically need more boundaries in your life? The book gives a really powerful list of warning signs that might hit home.
Like what?
Well, things like finding it really hard to voice your opinion if you disagree with someone, struggling to just say no, feeling guilty when you do ask for what you need, maybe being described as passive-aggressive sometimes, or consistently putting everyone else's happiness before your own.
Wow. Okay.
If any of those sound familiar, it's a pretty direct indicator that you could probably benefit from strengthening your boundaries.
That's a really useful self-check because just recognizing the need, that's the first hurdle, isn't it? So once you start seeing that, yeah, maybe I do need better boundaries, the next thing is understanding they aren't like a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. They show up in so many different forms, and the book lays them out really clearly with specific examples that make it easy to grasp.
Indeed. Let's start with the tangible ones, material boundaries. This is basically about your stuff, your property, your belongings.
Okay.
The book gives this example from boarding school kids just taking someone else's textbook without asking if they lost theirs, and then the original owner gets in trouble. It shows how even seemingly small violations can have real consequences.
Right.
But on the flip side, a strong material boundary example is the author sharing a house, but having this one specific cherished perfume that was just off limits. No explanation needed, friends respected it. It's about respecting ownership and just asking permission. Simple, really.
Okay, now, this is where it gets into the really deep psychological stuff. Emotional boundaries. This is all about knowing which emotions are yours and refusing to take responsibility for how other people feel. The big statement here is, no one can make you feel anything. You take charge of your own feelings, stop blaming others. Why is that such a game changer?
Oh, it's huge. Because it takes away the power other people seem to have over your internal state, weak emotional boundaries. Well, that looks like someone who's in a bad mood, picking fights just to discharge that feeling, or trying to guilt trip people, or projecting their anger onto something totally unrelated, that road rage example again, or snapping at a waiter.
Yeah.
The anger isn't really about the traffic or the food, is it? It's usually unresolved stuff from somewhere else being dumped onto the current situation. When you get that their anger is their choice to feel and express that way, you can just refuse to engage with it. You don't have to absorb it.
It's so interesting how the book talks about emotions as energy in motion. Like, if you repress them, they don't just vanish.
Yeah.
They just fester and come out sideways later, often destructively.
Exactly.
And this whole idea that some emotions are negative, it's a myth. Anger, sadness, fear, they're all natural, human, healthy signals. It's how we're taught to handle them, or rather not handle them, that makes them seem unhealthy.
And anger specifically gets highlighted as a really crucial boundary emotion. It's a clear signal, hey, something's not right here. My boundaries have been crossed. And it's interesting, it's the only so-called negative emotion that actually creates energy. It gives you the strength to protect your values, your morals. The author quotes Harriet Lerner, who just nails it. Anger is neither legitimate nor illegitimate. Anger simply is. It's data. It's a signal you need to pay attention to.
Okay, so if anger is a signal and other emotions are this energy in motion, how do you actually process them constructively without, lashing out or just stuffing them down?
Right. The book offers some really practical tools, like literally yelling into a pillow to release that physical tension, Or if you struggle to access sadness, maybe using media intentionally, think about those try not to cry videos on
Oh, yeah,
YouTube.
that get me every time.
Right. Or specific shows, Grey's Anatomy, Marley and Me always comes up. Or just putting on a really sad playlist. The
Okay.
point is to trigger the emotion safely, let it out, externalize it, and then you can refocus on your own situation and figure out where it's really coming from.
Okay.
And a really key insight here is this concept of the inner child. If you suddenly feel this wave of emotion that seems way too intense for whatever just happened.
Yeah, like disproportionate.
Exactly. It's often a sign that the current situation is poking at an old, unhealed wound or feeling from your childhood. The book suggests visualizing your adult self actually supporting your child self in that memory, giving them the validation, the love, the support they needed back then but didn't get. It helps release that stuck energy. It's not just about managing emotions in the moment, it's about real, deep internal healing.
Wow. Okay, so we talked about the physical walls, the emotional walls of our house. But what about the less tangible ones, like our ideas, our beliefs, even just the rules of how we talk to each other? The book calls these intellectual boundaries. Can you give us a feel for what a healthy intellectual boundary looks like versus maybe one that's been crossed?
Sure. So, weak intellectual boundaries.
Yeah.
That might look like a parent who keeps pushing their religious beliefs onto their adult child, just unable to accept they have different views now. Or online, maybe dismissing personal attacks instead of just disengaging, like letting insults slide.
Mm-hmm.
Strong intellectual boundaries, though, I mean, okay, maybe you take constructive criticism on board, but if it's wrapped up in a personal attack, you just dismiss the attack part. It's about being able to disagree without resorting to abuse and, yeah, blocking people online who do. It's basically respecting the integrity of your own thoughts and refusing to engage with disrespect.
Got it. And finally, sexual boundaries. This one's obviously critical, but it feels like it often gets misunderstood beyond just the basic idea of consent. What does the book emphasize here?
Well, consent is absolutely the bare minimum, non-negotiable baseline.
Right.
But sexual boundaries also include being aware of more subtle things like coercion or pressure, and verbal boundaries like using safe words, or even just talking about what kind of language your partner likes or doesn't like during intimacy.
Okay.
Weak sexual boundaries could look like someone sending unsolicited, explicit photos, or maybe a long-term partner constantly nagging for something, hoping you'll eventually give in just to make it stop. If you find yourself doing things you don't really want to do, maybe because you want to be liked or you're afraid of rejection, that's also a sign of weak boundaries in this area. The book actually mentions a Love Island example, which sounds funny, but it makes the point where one contestant, Luke, explicitly asks, "Can I touch you?" before initiating contact. That's a clear demonstration of respecting consent and boundaries in an ongoing way. It's about enthusiastic, continuous agreement, not just a one-off yes.
Okay, so we've got a much clearer picture now of what boundaries actually are, the different types, and why they're often so hard to deal with. But how do you actually do it? How do you have those conversations, especially when they feel really scary or potentially confrontational?
Right, the million-dollar question.
Yeah, and that's where the selfish method comes in.
Yeah.
What makes this particular mnemonic, this acronym, so effective for navigating those tricky boundary conversations?
It's really quite brilliant because it takes what feels like a messy, emotional process and breaks it down into these manageable, logical steps, almost like a checklist before a difficult flight, you know? And the mnemonic itself, selfish, is kind of ironically perfect, right? It constantly reminds you of the core purpose. You're doing this to prioritize your well-being. It helps you stay grounded, articulate your needs clearly, even when emotions might be swirling.
Okay, let's walk through it. Maybe use a common example, like say your partner comes home late again, without letting you know.
Perfect example. Okay, first step, stories.
Stories.
This is all about sticking to the facts, not the narratives you invent in your head. Fact. Your partner came home later than they said they would. The story your brain might create is, oh, they must be cheating, or they just don't care about me.
Right, the worst case scenario.
Exactly. The book really highlights how our brains rush to fill in the blanks, often with negative stuff. So just being aware of that tendency is the crucial first step. Just the facts.
Okay, facts, not stories. Got it. Next.
Next is emotions. Before you even think about talking to them, you need to process your own feelings first. So if their lateness triggers feelings of, say, rejection or abandonment from your past, those are your feelings, your baggage to unpack.
You need to work through those separately before the conversation. Being clear on what emotional stuff belongs to you versus what belongs to this specific situation stops you from dragging old issues into a new discussion.
That's huge. Okay, so process your emotions.
Then, let go of conclusions. This is a big one, too. Don't walk into that difficult conversation with a whole pre-rehearsed script in your head about how it's definitely going to go or exactly what the other person is thinking or going to say.
Guilty as charged sometimes.
We all do it. But try to enter with an open mind. Allow them the space to potentially change your mind or offer a perspective you hadn't considered. Genuinely listen. It fights that natural urge we have to just assume the worst and prepare for battle.
Okay, open mind. What's F?
Find the desired outcome. You need to be crystal clear in your own mind first what specific behavior change you are actually asking for. In this example, maybe it's simple. You just want them to send a text next time if they're going to be late.
And the key is, the boundary should be set around the behavior. Text me if you're late, not your feelings. Stop making me worry. And phrase it positively if you can. Next time, could you please just text me to let me know? Is usually received better than stop ignoring my texts. It makes it concrete and actionable for them.
Okay, know what you want, then initiate.
Initiate the conversation, yes. And timing here is absolutely crucial. You wouldn't want to bring this up when your partner stumbles in drunk at midnight, right?
Probably not the most productive time, no.
Exactly. Wait until the next morning, maybe, when things are calmer. You've both had some sleep, some time to process. You can even set a boundary around the conversation itself the night before by saying something like, hey, can we talk about this tomorrow? I'm really tired right now and I'm going to bed.
Oh, that's smart. Delaying it constructively.
Yeah. Then set the boundary. This is the moment. State it clearly as a fact, not as a point of negotiation or discussion. Remember, boundaries are your decision about what you will and won't accept in your life.
It's not a request.
It's not a request, it's a declaration of your needs. The book does emphasize trying to communicate it from a place of love and care for the relationship, which often helps it land better. But the boundary itself is firm.
Okay. And finally, H, hold it.
Hold the boundary. This is absolutely where the rubber meets the road. Because setting it once is one thing, maintaining it is another. If the behavior happens again, you need to have thought about and then implement a consequence.
Right.
So using our example, if they're late again without texting, the conversation might be, look, we talked about this. You said you'd text if you stayed out later. This is the second time now, and honestly, I find it disrespectful. So next time this happens, if you're not home when you say you are and haven't let me know, I'm just going to go to bed without you.
Okay.
Or if it felt like a safety issue, maybe it's you'll need to arrange to stay at a friend's house that night. The absolute key is you have to follow through. The first few times you do this, it might feel awkward, clumsy.
Super uncomfortable, probably.
Totally. But it gets easier with practice.
Yeah.
And consistently holding that boundary is what actually earns you respect in the long run.
Okay. That selfish method makes a lot of sense. It breaks it down really clearly. But once you start doing this, setting these boundaries, using that method or any other, it's not always going to be smooth sailing, is it?
Oh, definitely not.
You're going to get reactions. It's going to feel really uncomfortable, especially at first. Let's talk about navigating those common obstacles and maybe how boundaries look different in various relationship contexts like work or friendships.
Absolutely. Two of the biggest obstacles you'll likely face immediately are guilt and the fear of being disliked.
Yeah, the big ones.
Totally. It's completely natural to feel a pang of guilt after setting a boundary, especially if it goes against everything you've been taught your whole life about putting others first. But the book really stresses your opinion of yourself has to matter most. The author actually says something like, I'm not a nice person, but I am a compassionate one. And she explains the difference. A nice person might just do everything for you, maybe enabling you. But a compassionate person loves and supports you while you learn to do things for yourself. It's a shift from prioritizing likability to prioritizing integrity and genuine support.
That's a powerful distinction. Okay, so guilt and fear of being disliked. What about when the reaction is more manipulative, like gaslighting?
Yes, gaslighting. It's a classic tactic manipulators use to try and regain control when they feel you pulling away or setting limits they don't like. They want to maintain the old power dynamic.
Right.
The book gives some really specific examples of common gaslighting phrases and, crucially, some empowering counter-responses. For instance, they might hit you with, you are crazy, or you're making such a big deal out of nothing.
Ugh, yes. How do you even respond to that without getting sucked in?
Well, for you are crazy, you can calmly counter with something like, Responding in a way that you wouldn't respond does not make me crazy. Or even more directly, just stop gaslighting me.
Okay, direct.
And if they try the "you're making a big deal out of nothing" line, you can respond with, "Well, it might not be a big deal to you, but it is to me. And if you care about me, then you should care about what matters to me." See,
Mhm.
it's not about arguing the bigness of the deal. It's about asserting your feelings matter.
Okay, that's good. What about you're being too sensitive? Or when they
Oh.
try to dismiss it like, oh, come on, it was just a joke.
For "you're being too sensitive," a really powerful counter the book suggests is flipping it. Have you considered that maybe you aren't being sensitive enough?
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And for the "it's just a joke" defense, you can simply state jokes that hurt other people aren't funny. If someone tries to deny reality with "I never said that" or "I never did that," you can calmly say, "If we're going to continue this conversation, I'm going to need you to be honest with me."
Mm. Setting a boundary on the conversation itself again.
Exactly. And finally, if they resort to really emotionally charged accusations like "you're so mean" or "you're being such a bully," you can simply reply, "You're allowed to think that," or maybe "bullies intentionally hurt others. I'm simply refusing to let you continue to hurt me." These responses aren't about winning. They're about refusing to internalize their distorted perception and holding your ground. And honestly, if someone reacts with intense anger or gaslighting when you set a reasonable boundary, that reaction just confirms how necessary that boundary really was.
That's a really good point. Okay, so how does all this boundary stuff play out in the workplace? That often feels like a totally different beast where setting boundaries seems almost impossible or like career suicide.
Yeah, it's a common feeling.
The book challenges that idea that workaholism is healthy, right?
Hmm?
Points out it often just fills voids and leads straight to burnout. And it kind of debunks that false choice.
Mm-hmm.
Either you speak your mind and get fired, or you stay silent and just build resentment. There has to be a middle ground.
There absolutely is. It starts with understanding your own worth. Just because your boss or colleagues like you doesn't necessarily mean they respect you or your time, your energy, their valuable resources. The book makes the point, if companies can afford the fancy office space and the catering for meetings, they can certainly afford to pay you fairly for your work and respect your time.
Good point.
Professional communication includes things like prompt responses, yes, but also respecting others' time and not wasting it. And when it comes to out-of-hours requests, the author suggests internally telling yourself, "This is not urgent or important right now," or even subtly communicating in an email something along the lines of, "A lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part." It's about managing expectations without being overtly confrontational. Maybe not apologizing for slight delays if they're reasonable, to reset expectations.
And there's that fantastic story in the book about setting a boundary with a difficult boss,
Yeah.
the one who sent the author on those pointless treasure
Oh,
hunts.
yeah, that's a great one.
It really brings it to life. Instead of just complaining or sucking it up, she calmly and professionally explained how these tasks were actually preventing her from doing her real job, which was helping patients. By clearly stating her refusal to be treated disrespectfully and waste time, she didn't get fired. She actually gained respect, and her probation period got fast-tracked.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how standing firm but doing it professionally and respectfully can lead to really positive outcomes, even with superiors.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Romantic relationships. What are the key boundary insights here? The book really emphasizes clear communication, right?
Hmm.
Calls out the silent treatment for what it is.
Absolutely. The silent treatment is labeled as passive-aggressive and incredibly damaging to trust. Instead of making your partner guess what's wrong, the book pushes for direct communication, even when it's difficult, like saying, "Hey, just so you know, I'm not ignoring you. I just honestly don't have the energy to talk about this right now. Can we circle back later?"
Right. That's a boundary itself, isn't it? Protecting your energy while still communicating.
Precisely. It lets your partner know what's going on without just shutting them out completely.
And I really loved the marriage meeting concept mentioned. It feels so proactive.
It's great. It's basically a scheduled, regular check-in, maybe weekly, maybe monthly, where both partners intentionally sit down and ask specific questions to make sure everyone's feeling good, needs are being met, and potential issues are addressed before they blow up.
What kind of questions?
Things like, "Where do you feel most appreciated by me this week?" Or, "Are there any boundaries we need to clarify or maybe renegotiate?" Or even, "How are you feeling about our sex life right now?" It moves the dynamic away from just reacting to conflicts and towards continuous, gentle negotiation and maintenance.
That sounds so healthy. And that line, love is not how much shit you can tolerate. Wow.
Mic drop moment, right.
Yeah.
Respect is absolutely paramount. The book argues pretty strongly that love without respect is basically meaningless.
Hard to argue with that.
Oh.
Okay, what about friendships? They often get overlooked in the boundary conversation, like they're supposed to be easy.
Yeah, there's this weird expectation that friendships should just work effortlessly. But the book rightly points out they need work too. Just like romantic partnerships, they evolve, they face challenges, they require intention.
Mm-hmm.
One really interesting idea is the no bitching rule. Basically, making a conscious effort to eliminate gossip and complaining about other people within the friendship.
Really? Why?
Because, the book argues, it fosters much deeper trust and healthier bonds. Instead of that superficial connection you get from bonding over mutual dislike, which is kind of a toxic shortcut, you build connection on more positive ground. It also encourages having honest friends, the ones who will hold you accountable and tell you the hard truths, not just offer empty encouragement or be yes men.
That makes sense. The book even tackles friendship breakups, doesn't it? Acknowledging how much they can hurt, sometimes even more than romantic ones.
Yes. And reframing it. Ending a friendship that's no longer working isn't a sign of failure. It's actually a sign of health and self-respect. It also makes a really important distinction between toxic dynamics and toxic people. It focuses on the behaviors within the relationship, not labeling the entire person as inherently bad. That's crucial for setting boundaries. Effectively, you're addressing the behavior, not attacking the person's character.
That's a kinder, more constructive way to look at it. And the danger of having just one go-to person for everything.
Yeah, that creates codependency. The book encourages building a diverse support system, different friends who meet different needs, rather than putting all your emotional eggs in one basket.
Okay, and when friendships do need to change or end, what are the options?
The book discusses two main approaches: distancing and cutting people out. Distancing is creating natural space when dynamics feel unhealthy, maybe giving things a chance to recalibrate or just fade naturally if needed. Cutting someone out is usually reserved for truly toxic patterns that are actively causing you harm. And even then, the book emphasizes doing it respectfully, ideally with clear communication, if possible, and safe.
The author also shares her own experience, right, of having a sort of mass exodus of friends after she started setting boundaries.
She does. Friends who perhaps unconsciously preferred the old her, the one without strong boundaries, the people pleaser, they naturally fell away because the dynamic they relied on no longer existed.
In the loneliness that can come after something like that,
Yeah.
that's acknowledged as real, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's framed as a normal part of the grieving process for those lost connections. But again, there's that crucial distinction. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. That period of solitude, while maybe painful initially, is presented as this incredible opportunity to learn to genuinely enjoy your own company. Like literally creating dates for yourself, treating yourself with the same care, attention, and intention you'd give a valued friend or partner. It's a time for vital self-discovery.
Okay, one last area here, limiting information and inner circles. This isn't about being secretive, is it? It's more about privacy.
Exactly. It's about privacy, not dishonesty. The idea is to consciously create levels of knowledge or inner circles. Think best friends, good friends, general friends, acquaintances.
Right.
And you tailor how much you share, whether it's personal struggles, past trauma, or even big successes based on the level of trust and intimacy you have with that person or group.
Yeah, the benefit of doing that.
The main benefit is boundarying opinions. Let's be honest, not everyone's input is helpful or even appropriate for every situation, even if they mean well. Limiting who gets the full story protects you from unsolicited advice or judgments that might not be grounded in real understanding.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Oversharing. The book suggests it's often actually a defense mechanism.
Yeah, ironically. It can be this attempt to fast-track intimacy or gain acceptance quickly, but it often backfires and hinders real deep connection because trust hasn't actually been built yet. The healthier way: share small bits of information, see how it's received, see if trust is earned and respected, and then maybe share more. It helps you protect your energy, boundary those opinions, and ensure your vulnerabilities or triumphs are shared with people who genuinely care and can hold that space for you appropriately.
Wow. Okay, so the transformation the book describes, when
Yeah.
you really start implementing boundaries, it's profound. It might mean, as you said, being more disliked by some people because you're not the go-to fixer or the constant people pleaser anymore. But ultimately, it leads to a life where you feel respected. And maybe more importantly, where you actually like yourself more.
That really is the key takeaway, isn't it? Respect over likability. The author talks about chasing being liked for so long, only to finally realize that respect, both from others and for yourself, feels infinitely better. It's incredibly liberating to reach a point where you're okay if some people don't like you simply because you're being authentic and prioritizing your own needs and choosing to continue being you anyway.
It's a powerful shift.
And it is a continuous journey. Nobody sets boundaries perfectly all the time. You'll slip up, you'll hesitate, maybe you'll let something slide that you later regret. But the goal isn't perfection. It's about getting quicker at noticing when a boundary has been crossed or when you need to set one, and forgiving yourself for the times you don't get it quite right. Because at its absolute root, this whole process, it's just a profound act of self-love.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now as you move forward from here? The book shares this really telling little anecdote near the end. The author was trying to leave a party. A friend kept asking her to stay of like a third time, and she just replied simply, boundaries.
Well, that was it.
And the conversation was just over. The mere mention of the word was enough. It really speaks to the quiet power you start to accumulate when you embrace this shift, doesn't it?
It really does. So maybe consider this as you go about your week. What's one small, maybe seemingly insignificant, but actually significant boundary word or action that you could try implementing? Just one small step you could take this week to start your own transformation towards prioritizing yourself and fostering deeper, more respectful relationships in all areas of your life.
That's a great challenge to leave you all with. Thanks so much for diving deep with us today in the Deep Dive.